You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. It's time to see what's making the headlines with the Daily Mirror columnist Susie Boniface and the editor of the Jewish Chronicle, Wallis. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. The Telegraph leads with the death of 6 children from Strep A infections. The Mail reports that experts believe youngsters' immunity to Strep A could be compromised because of time spent away from their peers during COVID lockdowns. The Mirror focuses on the human side of the outbreak, picturing one of the victims, 4-year-old Mohammed Ibrahim Ali. A poll in the Eye suggests 1 in 7 people who voted to leave the EU would now cast their ballot to remain instead. The Times understands strike action by members of the Royal College of Nursing later this month could affect A&E departments and cancer wards. The Guardian claims an exclusive with a report that up to 500,000 vulnerable families are missing out on help with their energy bills this winter because vouchers for prepayment meters are being lost, delayed or unclaimed. The Express hears that the King wants to be supportive of Prince Harry, but could reach a point of no return. The Financial Times hears that Russia has gathered a fleet of more than 100 antiquated oil tankers in an effort to evade the many Western sanctions imposed on them. The Star has the most important story. Meat eaters will hear today. Christmas pig in blankets are apparently under threat because of the increasing price of chipolatas. And The Sun has boxer Tyson Fury throwing his heavyweight behind the England squad before their World Cup match on Sunday and his own fight against Derek Chisora tomorrow night. And a reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you watch us. And we are joined tonight by Susie Boniface and Wallis. Welcome to you both. Let us start with the Times. The strikes are very much on people's minds at the moment. And this headline talking particularly about the nurses and the fact that they could walk out on cancer wards and A&E wards during the Christmas period. Susie.
Yeah, so they are promising that, chemotherapy and some other things are going to be absolutely protected. But, the general staffing levels are going to go down to what you might expect to see around Christmas time. There's some concern about whether or not radiotherapy or surgery would go ahead on strike days. And obviously, if you go to A&E and your life is in danger, if you've just had a heart attack or something like that, a nurse is going to treat you. I don't think you need to be too worried about that. But if you go to A&E and you've got a broken arm, which you can easily survive and it's not going to immediately kill you, then the nurses aren't going to leave the picket line for that one, which will mean that you could be in some pain, you could, be in a longer queue to be dealt with by those staff who are going to be providing the skeleton service, if you like. And what's really interesting is that despite the fact that all sounds really drastic and really horrible, and all of us are going to be telling our families over the next sort of few weeks and months, please don't jump up and down on the stairs, small child. This is not the time that we want to go to hospital, and telling our parents just to be careful and all the rest of it, and to just please don't go to hospital in the next couple of months. There is actually a massive support for the nurses and the strike action that is being taken, and the ballots that are coming up for professions like hospital porters and cleaners and the technicians and the pharmacists who all work in hospitals. 65% are supporting strike action by nurses, it says here. We have to wait and see, of course, whether that stays as solid a support as the strikes wear on. But it does seem to be that, generally speaking, this isn't quite like the strikes that I can remember as a child, which was sort of ideological against Thatcherism. These are strikes that people can understand, no matter what their walk of life is, that those on strike really need more pay to put food on their bellies and food on the table.
Yes, and Jake, that YouGov polling for The Times does suggest that there is significant public sympathy for the strikes, with 65% supporting the action by nurses. But do you think that support will continue when people might be directly affected by the strike?
I think it's a really, really difficult subject. I mean, strikes are difficult to debate anyway, let alone when we're talking about nurses who, amongst frontline workers, are really very much at the sharpest end. You're right, there is 65% support by the public for nurses because everybody feels a lot of sympathy for nurses. They don't get paid very much. They worked super hard during the pandemic, were heroic during those years, and are the great sort of unsung heroes in general of the NHS. But this action, I think, will threaten to begin to erode the public support once it begins to take effect, because nurses earn on average about £37,000. The average full-time wage in the UK is £33,000, so it's slightly above average. I'm not saying they don't deserve it for a moment. What they're negotiating for is almost a 20% rise, which I think most people will see as being a very large demand. And if people begin to go to A&E, as Susie said, and have a broken arm or something and have it not treated because of strikes, broken arm's not funny. It's very, very painful and can be dangerous as well if not treated properly. And if mistakes begin to be made because of strikes and serious complications arise, perhaps even deaths or injuries, I think serious questions will begin to be asked by the public, and that support will begin to fall back.
Meanwhile, we read in the Telegraph the terrible case of the 6 children that have died as a result of contracting strep A. There is another child that is critical in hospital. I mean, this will really play on people's mind, considering our previous story that we've been talking about, but parents now being told to be on the alert and look out for symptoms. Susie?
Yeah, now, look, I've got a small child. She's had scarlet fever before now, which is caused by strep A. She had the best of care in the NHS, and I'm sure if any child suffers serious complications, they're going to have the best that the NHS can do for them as well. And it does only affect very few numbers of people. I can barely stand to even look at this story and think about the poor families and the children that have died. It's unfortunate. Well, it's not unfortunate. It's just one of the most horrible things about this is that strep A often tends to get children who are 3, 4, 5 years old, who are just starting out in life. And of course, we need to bear in mind that for children that age, half their lives probably has been spent not socializing as much with other people as they normally would have done, and that will have increased their chances perhaps of not having very much resistance to strep when it comes along, and therefore having the chances of a more serious reaction to it when it does become invasive, as it has done in some of these cases. So it's one of the consequences perhaps of the pandemic and the care we all took of each other. And I'm sure the NHS will be taking the right care of those children that are suffering. And I'm sorry, I was barely even able to watch Josh's report earlier on about the little girl up north. It's just too difficult to watch, isn't it?
No, it is. It is extremely distressing. But as you say, scientists are saying that decision to close schools and keep children apart during the lockdown, that's left a wider pool of youngsters without immunity to the bacteria. So it seems as if this probably is a direct result of lockdowns. Jake?
That's right. I mean, for those of us who felt uncomfortable at the time when lockdowns were announced and then throughout, it's more evidence, it seems, that's suggesting that cost-benefit analysis wasn't properly made, and we rushed into lockdown with a bit too much enthusiasm and perhaps, prolonged it a little bit too much as well. I mean, look, nobody could have foreseen this. I'm not saying that for a moment, but there was a sense at the time, Rishi Sunak has said that since, that the government didn't do a proper cost-benefit analysis. And the effects of having a lockdown for such a long time are so far-reaching and are costing lives to this day. Not just strep A deaths, but also in terms of the backlog, the NHS backlog, cancer deaths, excess deaths are high because of the fallout of lockdown at the moment. And this is just another grim reminder that lockdown does have very, very far-reaching consequences indeed.
Indeed. Let us have a quick look, Suze. We've just got time to have a look at the Express. Sajid Javid is quitting at the next election.
Yes, the most high-profile Tory to bail at this stage. And it's because there's a deadline of Monday for them to decide whether or not they're standing for the next election. And that's partly because the party wants to have a couple of years ahead of the next election to prepare and get new candidates ready rather than rush them in. But it adds to sort of a general sense of decay in the ruling party if they just start having all these people announcing 2 years in advance going, do you know what, this is going nowhere, I'm out. It's not a good look for the Conservative Party at all. It wouldn't be for any party that was doing this sort of thing. And I think, to be honest as well, I mean, I have some sympathy for people who fairly certain they're going to be losing their jobs in a couple of years' time. Okay, but it's still a couple of years away, and it's a pretty well-paid job. And I'm very uncomfortable about the idea of MPs spending the next 2 years looking for the next one while not really doing this one properly. I'm extra uncomfortable about people like Sajid Javid in his position saying, well, I support the government fully, but I want nothing to do with it. They plainly don't have the courage of their convictions. There are things this government are doing which they believe are not going to get them electable enough to win another election. So therefore, why are you supporting the government doing it? Why are you going to spend the next 2 years voting with the whip, backing the government up, when you know that these things are going to be far too painful to get re-elected, and it's what public don't want.
That is when he's made his decision to leave. But we read in some of the other papers that he is already eyeing up other jobs in finance and the city. Thank you both for the moment. We are going to take a break. Coming up, is the King running out of patience with Prince Harry? The Express believes so. We'll discuss that and more next. Welcome back. You are watching the press preview. Still with me, Susie Boniface and Jake Wallis-Simons. There they are. Let's have a look at the Express. And according to the paper, the King is running out of patience with Prince Harry. Susie.
Well, this has been said a few times before. It also says further inside that he would forgive Harry just about anything. I think what we've got here really is the fact that the media want to keep talking about Meghan and Harry and the royal race row, because firstly that sells papers, is the kind of thing that everyone is talking about and has an opinion on. Interestingly, if I look on my Twitter, everyone's sort of pro Meghan. If I look on my Facebook, everyone's very anti the poor lady who was actually sort of had a go at by Lady Susan Hussey, allegedly. And it kind of has to sort of rumble on, I think, in a way. But it's also not really been disproved or fixed or resolved. It says here that the palace has now reached out to Ngozi Fulani, the lady who was sort of targeted in this "where are you from" debacle, being asked 8 times, something which I wouldn't be asked once. And if I was asked, I'd only have to answer it once. I wouldn't have to say it 3 or 4 times. So, which is obviously makes it racist. And it's just that, they've got to keep on going on with this. They have reached out to her now, but it hasn't really been resolved. And meanwhile, the attention, the criticism has moved on to Meghan, who has never said anything like this. But somehow we've got a lady of colour who's been targeted and harassed in a way that's quite unacceptable in Buckingham Palace. But the criticism is about another lady of colour who pointed out to the palace some time ago that this sort of thing was likely and quite bad. And somehow it's criticism of Meghan that we're getting. I don't understand how we've got to that point. It's a mystery.
But the Express is focusing on the relationship with Harry and the King, though, isn't it, Jake?
That's right. I mean, based on royal sources, the Express is suggesting that Charles is saying that he will always keep his door open to Harry, but at the same time sort of contradicting himself by saying that there is a red line. If he crosses that, then there will be consequences. And what that red line might be that if he talks in his forthcoming book, Spare, which is coming out in January, this 400-page incendiary volume of criticism of the royal family, if he includes too much criticism of Camilla and his father in the narrative of his parents' divorce, this royal source suggests that might be an enough is enough moment for King Charles, who then may make the move of stripping the Sussexes of their title entirely and casting them adrift.
Yeah, there's also the Netflix airing to come about as well, isn't there? Just very quickly, there may be a problem if you're a meat eater over Christmas. What is the Star warning us of, Susie?
There's an increase in the cost of chipolatas. Fundamentally, that's what we come down to. I'm not quite sure what the headline is based on, but I think it's a massive fail they didn't get Peter Andre in there somewhere. But fundamentally, it means that for many people, the cost of Christmas dinner, which is already quite high, of course, is going to be significantly more if you're one of those people who likes eating a miniature sausage wrapped in bacon while you're doing it.
Right. Thank you. You summed that up very well. I won't go into the Peter Andre reference. Thank you, Susie and Jake.